With routine, I used to go to Court 1 and watch the games I was interested in. I'm not going there right now because I can't. I'm not going to go near it. Cliff Richard is a name that is linked to British pop history. There have been more than 6 decades of work and millions of records sold. But he hasn't been in the news much lately, which has confused fans and the media. Some thought it might have been age. For some, it was the changed tastes in music. There were rumors going around about hidden scandals that were said to have hurt his image. What happened that wasn't in the news? And why did one of Britain's most beloved stars hide from the public? Most people don't understand how complicated, shocking, and human the truth is. It goes against everything they think they know about fame. Despite problems, Cliff Richards rose to fame. Cliff Richard was born Harry Roger Webb on October 14, 1940, in Lucknow, India. His name is now linked to British pop history. Richard has been very interested in music since he was very young. This interest grew even stronger after his family moved to England in the mid-1950s. Moving to England changed his life because it exposed him to new cultures and gave him access to a lively music scene that was starting to enjoy early rock and roll and skiffle. As a kid, he became deeply involved with music. He played in several skiffle and rock bands, tried out different instruments, and performed wherever he could. Not only did these early events shape his music, but they also gave him the discipline, confidence, and stage presence that would become hallmarks of his career. From a young age, he learned how to connect with an audience, show how he felt through performance, and mix modern sounds with his own style. Richard had already set the stage for what would become a famous career in the entertainment business by the time he was ready to make his big break. Richard's big break came in 1958, when the song "Move It" came out. It is often seen as one of the first real British rock and roll hits. When this song came out, it changed everything, not just for Richard but for the whole British music scene. At a time when American rock was the most popular music style, Move It showed that British singers could make music that was just as exciting, new, and popular. People were quickly drawn to the song's raw energy, catchy guitar riffs, and Richard's charismatic delivery. Unlike many artists of the time, who became famous for a short time and then disappeared from view, showed an amazing ability to keep a career going for a long time. People knew him for being dependable, skilled, and able to change with the times in the music business. Move It was a lot more than just a hit song. It showed that British rock could be strong on its own. It made Richard a major player in history, and his impact would be felt for decades to come. Between 1959 and the 1960s, Cliff Richard's career grew quickly and did very well in the music business. He became a popular name when his 1959 album Living Doll went straight to the top of the UK charts and became a #1 hit. Many people liked the song because it was charming and easy to understand, which helped Richard connect with people all over the country. Fans could respect and relate to him because of how well he could sing, how charismatic he was, and how relatable his lyrics were. Living Doll's popularity did not come and go quickly. Instead, it was the foundation for a series of hits that came after. They helped Richard get a lot of fans and became a major figure in British pop culture in the early 1960s. The song also showed how versatile he was by showing that he could go beyond simple rock and roll and accept a more melodic, mainstream sound while still keeping his own style. During this time, Richard's impact grew beyond music and into movies, showing that he was very talented in many areas. From 1961 to 1963, he was in a number of well-known British movies, such as The Young Ones, 1961, and Summer Holiday, 1963. These movies did well at the box office and showed him to more people, making him famous in areas other than music. His movie roles stood out because they had a lot of charm, fun, and musicality. Allows him to engage viewers in more ways than just singing. In many of his movie parts, Richard incorporated musical numbers into the plot without any problems, making for a smooth entertainment experience that people liked. By going into movies, he not only expanded his audience, but he also helped start a trend of artists who can do well in more than one form of entertainment. Richard was able to stay relevant in an industry that was changing quickly by using a variety of skills. This kept his name in the public eye even as people's tastes in music changed around him. In 1965, Richard became a born-again Christian, which was a turning point in his life. This mental change had a big effect on both his private life and how people saw him in public. Even though his music was still loved by millions, his faith became more important to him. It affected the choices he made about his job, the projects he worked on, and the messages he sent through his art. Becoming a born-again Christian did not make him less popular. Instead, it gave the show more depth and realism that many fans found appealing. Richard was different from other pop stars of the time because he was honest about his views. Who often put making money ahead of everything else. His religious beliefs affected everything he did as an artist, from the songs he chose to making public appearances. He was honest, which made people admire both his ability and his beliefs. This part of his life became a defining trait over time, affecting how he interacted with fans, co-workers, and the entertainment industry as a whole. Cliff Richards's battles with the media and moral stance. As Cliff Richard's work went beyond his early successes, he faced problems that were not just the normal stresses of fame. In the beginning of his career, he had #1 songs on the charts, shows that were packed, and roles in famous movies. But as his career went on, he ran into a different kind of problem. Not because of how interesting people thought his music was, but because of how the media covered and pushed it. Some records were treated badly by UK radio stations, which sometimes wouldn't play his music. This was one of the biggest problems. The Millennium Prayer, a song with sacred themes and Richard's unique melodic style, was a great example of this. Some stations chose not to play the song, even though he was very famous and had fans who had been listening to him for decades. Richard wasn't happy with this decision, and he spoke out against it in public, saying that he thought it limited his work in an unfair way. He said that all modern music, including his own, had the power to entertain, motivate, and connect with many people. And that not giving it to them because of personal or societal biases was unfair. Through his public statements, Richard showed that he was still involved with his business and determined to make sure that his music could connect with people of all ages. This situation also showed the bigger problem that artists' personal beliefs and the people who control culture in the entertainment business often don't get along. A tension that would change the way people saw Richard for years to come. Richard had trouble getting along with some news outlets, and his public image, which was shaped a lot by his Christian faith, made things even more difficult. The year 1965, Richard became a born-again Christian. Since then, his religious beliefs have had a big impact on both his personal and work life. Such as the songs he made and the public causes he decided to support. Because he wasn't afraid to talk about moral and ethical problems in public, he sometimes went against cultural trends. This was especially true as the entertainment industry became more accepting of sexually explicit content after the 1970s. People argued about Richard's place in British society because he pushed for family-friendly values and spoke out against content he thought was morally wrong. This led to conversations about the role of personal belief in public life. Some critics said that his ideas were out of date or too conservative, saying that they didn't fit with current sensibilities or the way culture is changing. Supporters also said nice things about how consistent, honest, and brave he was. People admire his ability to stick to his beliefs despite the scrutiny of the public, especially in an industry where money often rules. These arguments helped us get a better sense of Richard's public image. People admired him for more than just his musical skills, they saw him as someone who was ready to stand up for what was right, even if it caused trouble. Richard's experiences with opposition from the media and public debate showed how hard it is to have a long-lasting job and stick to your personal beliefs at the same time. A lot of artists change how they act in public to fit in with current trends or societal expectations. But Richard always stuck to what he believed in, even when that got him in trouble or limited his career options. He was critical of radio stations for not giving him enough airtime, which shows that he knows how power works in the music business and won't let institutional choices hurt his connection with fans. At the same time, the arguments about his Christian beliefs show how hard it is to stay true to yourself in a public position that usually values following what most people think. These events show how difficult it was for Richard to balance his artistic expression, his personal faith, and the expectations of the public. It's an impossible balance that he maintained for decades. The tension between what Richard personally believed and what the media accepted had a real impact on the direction of his later works. Some songs, like The Millennium Prayer, were more than just music. They showed his faith and beliefs and were based on the principles he had worked hard to uphold for a long time. Some radio stations wouldn't play those songs, which was a sign of a bigger cultural negotiation he had to make as a public person. The need to find a balance between one's own beliefs and what society and institutions expect of them. Richard's public criticism of these choices showed that he cared about more than just his own success. He also wanted people who had backed him for a long time to be able to access his work. By defending his music in public, he strengthened his relationships with fans who shared or respected his views. At the same time, he drew attention to what he saw as unfair or inconsistent treatment of religious or moral artists by the media. This part of his career shows how an artist's reputation, both personal and professional, can have a direct effect on how their work is received. Showing how artistic expression and institutional control work together in a complicated way. People had more than just media debates about Richard's persona. They also had larger societal debates about morals, culture, and entertainment. Newspapers and magazines wrote a lot about and analyzed his resistance to sexually explicit media in the 1970s, for example. Some critics said that his point of view was conservative or even old-fashioned, implying that it went against the changing culture norms of the time. Others viewed his position as an ethical stand, saying that in a time of fast social change, Richard was a voice of morality and consistency. It was because of these views that people started talking about how famous musicians affect cultural norms and how much personal belief should affect public advocacy. Richard set himself up as more than just a pop artist by doing this. He became famous, and people talked about his beliefs and ideals in terms of ethics, media accountability, and social norms. His unwavering stance showed a dedication to principles that became a part of his public identity, even when critics questioned his relevance or cultural fit. Cliff Richard's legacy in the wake of controversies. After the media and public debates about his faith and later releases, Cliff Richard began a time of professional reinvention and continued success that would shape the next few decades of his career. Richard's comeback record, I'm Nearly Famous, came out in 1976. It was a big change in both his sound and his popularity around the world. Devil Woman, the album's lead song, was Richard's first top 10 hit in the US. It introduced him to a whole new audience and showed that he was still important in the UK music scene. This accomplishment was even more impressive when you think about the problems he had in the past, like the problems with radio play and how people felt about his religion and moral beliefs. Richard's ability to adapt to changing musical styles while keeping the traits that had made him famous for a long time was shown on I'm Nearly Famous. Stunning melodies, a polished vocal performance, and an undeniable stage personality. The success of this record showed not only how talented he is, but also how strong and flexible he is. He had the traits that would help him keep working for decades. Richard showed that he could work in both domestic and foreign markets by adopting a slightly more modern sound while staying true to his musical identity. This solidified his position as a versatile and long-lasting performer. Richard kept putting out hit singles and albums in the late 1970s and early 1980s, solidifying his place as one of the UK's most reliable musical artists. He had a lot of commercial success with the song We Don't Talk Anymore in 1979. It showed that he could make catchy, easy-to-understand pop music while still keeping the emotional depth and melodic appeal that had always been a part of his work. This song not only topped the UK charts, but it also showed that Richard is a great producer that modern listeners could relate to, showing that he was aware of how musical tastes and trends were changing. In 1981, he released Wired for Sound, which was another commercially successful album and single that showed he was still important in a tough business. Richard did a great job of balancing the needs of current pop music with his well-known persona during this time, drawing in new listeners while keeping old fans happy. It showed that he knew his audience well and was dedicated to his work because he was successful on the charts for many years. His output was very consistent over these years, showing a level of professional longevity that few artists in the quickly changing worlds of British and foreign pop music could match. During these years, Richard reinvented himself in more ways than just trying out new songs. It also required a strategy response to how the music business was changing. Many artists his age had trouble staying popular as new genres and younger acts came out, but Richard was able to mix modern pop elements with his own sound that made it stand out. This time showed how he could appeal to people of different groups at the same time. He kept older fans who had been following him since the 1950s and gained new ones who liked his more modern style. His songs and albums from this time proved that to stay in the music business for a long time, you need to be creatively innovative and know what your fans want. By finding this balance, Richard not only kept his work going, but he also built his reputation as an artist who could change without losing the qualities that made him famous in the first place. Richard's long list of accomplishments was officially recognized when he was named as Sir Cliff Richard in 1995 for his work in music and charity. That person worked hard for decades and finally got this award. Not only to his music business but also to helping others and doing good in the world. Richard's cultural status rose when he was knighted, confirming his status as an iconic figure whose impact went far beyond record sales and chart positions. The award showed how much he had contributed to society and the arts, and it showed how his work had managed to be both financially successful and morally sound. It was an important event that showed how much respect he had among people of all ages and proved the lasting value of his artistic and social work. The knighthood was also a sign that society as a whole respected the balance Richard had kept throughout his career. In terms of economic success, public image, and personal conviction, it was a celebration of a performer who had stayed relevant across generations while staying true to the values and standards that had made him famous in the first place. In 2008, Richard celebrated 50 years in the music business, which was another important event. Marked with annual albums and get-togethers with the Shadows, the band that played a big role in his early career. Not only were these events nostalgic, they also showed that Richard was still remembered by many people and that he had been culturally important for a very long time. Getting back together with the Shadows gave him a chance to respect the beginnings of his musical journey. It reminded people of the important part he played in shaping British pop music and showed that he was still connected to his roots. Anniversary collections were both a way to honor his memory and bring his music to the attention of new listeners. Bringing together fans who have been fans for decades and proving that he is a talent that will never go out of style. By celebrating 50 years in the music business, Richard showed how rare it is for an artist to stay popular, powerful, and profitable across multiple generations. Not many performers are able to do this with such consistency and grace. Cliff Richard kept performing and touring well into his 80s, even as the 2000s and 2010s came to a close. This shows how strong he was and how popular he still is. Being active on stage and in public during this time shows not only physical strength but also a desire to stay relevant in the music business, which often values newness and youth. Richard's ability to keep fans interested, sell out shows, and keep them coming back even in his later years shows how deeply he has connected with them over the years. His accomplishments are more than just displays of longevity. They show how good his art is, how well he can perform songs, and how strongly his music has stayed with people over time. Richard has been an important figure in British music through times of rapid change and shifting tastes because he continues to tour and perform. He has the rare combination of experience, talent, and cultural importance that has made him so. Richard's personal and health problems. As Cliff Richard's career went on into the late 1980s and early 1990s, his public image stayed a key part of who he was, one that set him apart and sometimes led to criticism. Richard has long seen himself as an example of professionalism and care in an industry that is often marked by showiness, excess, and debate. He is known for keeping himself in good shape and acting like a professional. His approach to fame has been careful and deliberate, showing a dedication to personal values and a desire to leave a lasting memory rather than short-lived attention. Fans love that he always works to keep up a good image. They admire his honesty, professionalism, and sense of dependability that he brings to every public event. Many of Richard's fans see him as a talent who stands for longevity, discipline, and respectability in a business that often rewards excess and risk-taking. His visual style shows a level of thoughtfulness and forethought that has helped him maintain a job spanning decades and earned him the loyalty of fans from all generations. While this is true, his careful image has sometimes been questioned by people who think his method is too cautious or limited. Some people have said that his character is annoying or goes against the standards of show business. He didn't want to live the usual rock and roll life, which was said to be different from the rebellious, scandal-driven way of life that is often praised in popular music. People have said a lot of bad things about Richard, but most of them are based on what people expect from star culture, not on anything wrong with Richard himself. They show how he has had to deal with the tension between his own choices and how people see him. Bringing attention to the fine line he has walked between being himself and the media's sometimes harsh scrutiny. Richard, on the other hand, has always defended his method and been proud of his choice to avoid the excesses of the rock star lifestyle. He has said that staying true to himself and putting long-term health and happiness ahead of short-term pleasures helped him make songs that people have loved for decades. By not fitting the stereotypical image of excess, Richard built a sense of sincerity and dependability that drew in a wide range of people, including families, older listeners, and fans who valued his moral integrity as much as his musical skill. Richard's unwavering dedication to a clean public image, which caused some problems in the business world at times, became one of the things that made him so important over time. During a time when many performers relied on scandal or shock value to stay in the news, Richard's method was different. It was based on respectability, professionalism, and consistent output. He avoided a lot of the problems that other rock stars had, like drug abuse, public scandals, and relationships that caused a lot of trouble. This helped him avoid many of the problems that stopped or slowed down other careers. Because he was careful, he could focus on making great art, performing live, and connecting with people in a meaningful way instead of dealing with constant media problems. On the other hand, this approach sometimes caused problems with the media and people in the business, who thought that his job was sometimes out of date or against the rules of show business. Some might see Richard's refusal to go over the top as a criticism of the entertainment industry as a whole, quietly questioning the idea that performers need to be flashy, scandalous, or morally compromised in order to be successful. But the fact that he chose to put his personal values ahead of short-term fame made him look like a performer with foresight, focus, and long-term goals. It showed that to stay in a job for a long time in a very competitive field, you need more than just talent. You also need to know how to handle your public image, your health, and your moral compass. Even though he was very careful to keep public behavior polite, time always brought new problems. Especially those that have to do with getting older and being healthy. Even Richard, who is known for being very tough, had to deal with the effects of traveling, recording, and public appearances for decades. Around the middle of 2025, news came out that the musician, who was now in his 80s, had started to talk about how getting older and sicker was affecting him. A job that lasted more than 60 years was impressive, but it put a lot of stress on the body and mind. The constant flow of shows, record sessions, interviews, and travel had worn Richard down to the point where he had to make the hard but smart choice to stop touring. Even though this was an emotional decision, it showed how practical he was and how much he cared about people's long-term well-being. Instead of pushing forward even though he was having personal problems, he knew it was important to change his work obligations to fit his new situation. Fans and critics alike agreed that this was a very important time in Richard's career and understood that he made his choice out of personal need and a deep love for the audiences he has entertained for decades. He didn't want to lower the quality of his shows or put his health at risk, so he stopped playing. He also wanted to protect his honor and public image. The reason why Cliff Richard stopped being famous. Cliff Richard's career has long been marked by toughness, skill, and a well-kept public image. In August, he went through one of the hardest and most personal times of his life. 2014, when South Yorkshire police raided his house as part of a probe into a 1985 sexual assault claim. There was a young boy involved in the claim, and even though it was about things that happened decades ago, it became a media sensation right away. A BBC News crew, acting on a tip from the police, filmed the raid from a helicopter and showed the dramatic video live to millions of viewers, which made people even more interested. This unusual media attention put Richard, a performer who has long been praised for his privacy, honesty, and well-kept image, in the public eye, which he found very stressful and bothersome. The raid and the sensationalist news coverage of it hurt the artist's personal and professional life right away and for a long time. The artist's career had been built on stability, respectability, and a reputation for being proper. The live broadcast of the raid put Richard in a public light of suspicion before any formal charges were made. It was a big change from the privacy and decorum he had been used to for a long time, and it showed how even the most experienced and well-behaved performers can be vulnerable when they see how the media works today. It is important to remember that Sir Cliff was never arrested or charged with a crime, no matter how public the situation was. After carefully looking over the evidence, authorities said in June 2016 that there wasn't enough to bring charges, and the case was officially dropped. This ruling made it clear that Richard had not done anything illegal to deserve the huge amount of attention he got from the public. But the harm had already been done to his image and overall health. The ordeal not only put him through mental stress from being wrongly accused, but it also had real effects on his health. In his own words, Sir Cliff said he was in a lot of emotional pain that showed up in his body as shingles. And admitted that the event had an effect on his work, which in turn affected his creative output. During 2 years, he said he was stuck in a creative limbo and couldn't fully connect with music, performance, or the work that had long defined his life and public identity. Being under so much public scrutiny, even though no one is legally responsible, takes a toll on a person's mental and physical health. This shows how dangerous it is for celebrities, the media, and the justice system to work together. It also shows the special pressures high-profile people face when accusations, even if they are false, are made public. Because the raid and the news coverage of it hurt Sir Cliff's personal and professional life, he took strong legal action and sued both the BBC and the South Yorkshire Police for breach of privacy. His argument was that the way the events were handled was a major intrusion into his personal life and caused a lot of trouble. The court case, which lasted several years, was a turning point for privacy rights, especially when it comes to famous people being accused of major crimes without being officially charged. In July 2018, the High Court ruled in Sir Cliff's favor, saying that the BBC had seriously and sensationalistically invaded his privacy. The judge made it clear that a suspect in a police investigation has a right to privacy and that naming him in public was not really in the public interest. This decision set a very important standard for how news outlets should report on suspects. It also reinforced the idea that the public's right to know must be carefully weighed against the journalist's reputation and well-being, especially when accusations are not proven and no formal charges have been filed. After the decision, Sir Cliff got a lot of money in damages and an official apology. This was both a personal victory and an admission to the public of the harm done. South Yorkshire Police ended the case quickly by paying Richard £400,000 plus his legal fees and saying they were sorry for how they handled the probe. The court told the BBC to pay £210,000 in damages and millions more in legal fees. This shows how seriously the court took their breach of privacy. Even though money could never fully erase the physical and mental damage, the settlements and court recognition were a step toward justice and reinforced the idea that everyone, even famous people, has the right to have their personal rights protected. These events were important because they showed the long-lasting effects of sensationalism in the media and how seriously police and news organizations are responsible when they report on unproven claims, especially when doing so can damage a person's image in a way that can't be fixed.